In this video, I'm going to show you step-by-step instructions on how to replace the front screen on the iPhone 14 Pro Max using an aftermarket part. To begin the repair, we need to remove the two pentalobe screws either side of the lightning connector on the bottom of the phone. Get those out of the way and keep them somewhere where you're going to remember where they are, because we do need to install them later. Once we've got those removed, we're going to take a single-sided razor blade and we're going to create a small gap between the screen and the chassis, just like that. It's optional to use heat to remove this screen. However, what you will find is that because the screen is damaged on this device, once you've inserted that blade, we can sort of fold it back like that to pry it open, and that's going to create a larger gap big enough to insert a plastic guitar pick so that we can separate the screen from the chassis. Just insert it a couple of millimeters and run it along the edges of the phone. Continue working your way around. I believe this screen may have been repaired before. In fact, I'm certain of it. And we're going to work our way around the three edges, the right hand edge, left hand edge and bottom edge, until we can lift up the screen from the bottom, wiggle it from side to side, and this one opens like a book from its front cover. We can see some of the frames been left behind because, as I said, this one has been replaced before or has been really damaged. And then just open up the screen like opening a book from the front. Now we're going to take a tri-wing screwdriver and remove the 8 screws that hold down this large shield that covers the majority of the logic board. I'm going to take them out in an order so that I know that they can go back in the same hole that they came out of, because a couple of these are actually different sizes. I'll go through reassembly later, explaining where the large screws go so that we don't damage the logic board. And don't forget, if you like repair content just like this, make sure that you subscribe to our channel for more great repair videos. There's just one more screw hidden up in this top left here. That's the longest of the 8. I'm going to take some tweezers now and remove this shield. Just be careful when you are lifting this out, because there is a bit what sticks out up at the top here, and we don't want to catch that cable just here with that. That would be really unlucky. Now I'm going to take a plastic spudger and I'm going to disconnect the battery first of all, isolating power from the phone. Make sure that you use plastic tools at this point, because obviously metal tools are conductive and can be very damaging to the logic board. Next, we're going to remove this flex cable too, using the plastic stick. And then finally, there is one more flex cable just up here. I tend to pop them out like that, rather than trying to get in the gap, just to get under the flex cable and it pops out. That means that we can now remove the screen. And I've never seen one what's got so much damage to the frame, which is very unusual. And it looks like it's the original screen because we've got Apple logos and stuff there. How strange. Next, we need to replace the dust and moisture resistant seal that runs around the edges of the phone. And to do that, I find it best to use one of these number 4 X-Acto blades. And you just sort of use it like a sort of scraping tool to peel off as much of that seal as we possibly can. Continue working your way around with the scraping tool. It is difficult to remove and it does require a bit of work, but it is very important to remove all of that remaining seal so that the new seal does its job correctly. And obviously this is a sharp metal tool, so you need to be very careful when working around flex cables and the battery. So just be careful as well when you're removing this, because that plastic mesh there for the ear speaker is easy to lose. And sometimes, especially with aftermarket screens, it may not come with a new mesh attached. So make sure that you don't lose that. But it is a very good opportunity to clean that mesh, because it is very prone to filling up with gunk and stuff. So just run some tweezers over it to get the thick of the gunk off, and then some kind of soft brush as well always helps. Same again on those edges. We're going to use the soft brush, like a toothbrush, to give it a good cleaning off and make sure that there's no dust and gunk and stuff left behind. You can use a little bit of alcohol as well, that'll help, just to loosen any of the more stubborn gunk that's sat on there. Once that is removed, we can take the new dust and moisture resistant seal now peel off the top layer of the film, and then I always find that the best way is to line it up in the top left corner first. So once that's lined up in that top left corner, then we can line it up along this left hand edge, and the rest of it should follow suit quite nicely. All that you'll need to do is take the flat end of the spudger and just push down into the edges to make sure that it's sat nicely and stuck properly to the chassis. There's usually a little pull tab so that you can remove that top layer, and depending what kind of film you've got, it'll either have just that layer or more layers. So just peel it back now. If you find that it's lifting a little bit, then you can just push it down with the spudger again. But that's looking pretty good. Now we'll put the phone to one side and begin preparing the new screen, which starts by removing this from the old screen. There's two crosshead screws that hold down a little shield on the back of the screen here. Remove those two screws and then use your tweezers to remove the shield. You will find that you need to heat up this area significantly. I believe that this screen's been replaced before, so this part has been swapped over, so it will be a little bit easier for me. But to heat it up, use a heat gun or hairdryer, or you can add a couple of drops of isopropyl alcohol underneath it, followed by the plastic pick, just to slide under there and separate the adhesive. Once you've got sort of the whole of that right hand edge removed, that means that you can just grab it with your thumb and begin peeling it very gently away, just like that. With the sensors that's on there, I'm going to use heat. So I'm set at 200 degrees C and full wind speed with my heat gun. You can do the same with a hairdryer or a hot air gun. And I'm just going to sort of warm up the area for probably 30 seconds. Then I'll use my tweezers to lift up the sensors very, very carefully. I don't want to damage these, because they do house important parts on them. But once you've lifted them out of their brackets, they should lift off quite easily. So now we can put this broken screen to one side and then get our new screen out. This is an OLED display from one of our local suppliers, and I'm going to peel off any of the plastic films that sit around on the back. Make sure you do this. It's always bad when we open up a phone and see all these peels still stuck on there. It just looks like a poor job. But now what we're going to do is line up those sensors, and then we can stick down the rest of the flex cable just there. Make sure that that's secured down, and now we can pop this shield on here and reinstall those two crosshead screws that held it down. When I said that it was a aftermarket part, I think I was fibbing. It looks like it's a refurb, and you can usually tell when the chip's been ground a little bit like that to hide the Apple logo, just for shipping purposes. But I'll probably know more once we get it connected and turn it on. But it does look like a decent quality screen. Reassembly is very, very simple. It's just a case of reversing the steps that we took to remove the screen, starting off by connecting up the display connector first. But it's always helpful to pop a mug behind the screen, just so that you can free up both hands, although I did do it one-handed before. But for reassembly, I definitely need both hands, just for the dexterity, whilst reconnecting this cable just there. Make sure that it sits in well, and then we've just got the battery down here. And now that big shield that goes over the top of everything, make sure that that sits in nicely. There's no hooks on this one like on other models of a similar age, and it's quite nice for it to just be one large shield rather than a couple of little fiddly ones. But we'll start off with the longest of the screws up in the top left. Then the other long one goes just here. You can always tell when it's going to be a longer one because it's going into a standoff screw rather than a screw that's fixed onto the logic board. And then one more long one just here. And I believe the rest of these now are all the same size. They're sort of a smaller screw that goes into the standoffs that are soldered to the board rather than the standoff screws, if that makes sense. Or am I just waffling? maybe I'll explain in another video in the future. One there. And the final one goes just here. I would recommend testing the screen at this point before installing the shield, because obviously you don't want to get everything screwed down only to find that something doesn't work. Now that the shield's installed and the 8 screws are back into place, we're going to fold down the screen, reattach it up at the top, making sure that it sits in flat and flush, and then we're going to apply pressure along the edges all the way down to the bottom, making sure that it sits nicely all the way around, before finally installing our 2 pentalobe screws into the bottom of the phone. Now we're going to just make sure that it turns on, of course. I always plug them into power. There we go. I even made a sound then. Did you hear that? I've never known a phone make a sound when you plug it in. It actually looks good, and like the viewing angle's decent. I'm thinking that this is a refurb display. It came on fast. Like, look at the colours look good. Happy days. Thank you for watching. See you next time.